Hi everybody, this is your host Yvon from Tahiti. We are visiting this afternoon with Jimmy Nordhoff, son of Charles Nordhoff from the famous teams of writer Nordhoff and Hall. Jimmy, I came to see you this afternoon to talk about your daddy, the famous writer Charles Nordhoff that came to Tahiti many years ago. Tell us about him.
It started in 1916 when he left for France, actually to fight in the French army.
Was he a flyer? Or?
No, he started, first of all, he was in the infantry in the Foreign Legion, and then he became an ambulance driver, and then finally he fought as a flyer in l'Escadrille Lafayette.
Famous one.
I presume so, and that's how he met his friend Hall, who was also fighting in the French, Air Force. Right during World War I, he was writing articles for the Harper, I think, and many of the magazines in the States, because his family was already a very famous writers. I mean, his grandfather was named also Charles Nordhoff. He was quite famous in the years 1860. He wrote with the Western Pacific and this and many books about the Sandwich Island, which is Hawaii. And my father, I guess, with Hall, wrote quite a few books.
Tell us about the books that he wrote.
I presume the most famous one was Mutiny on the Bounty. Of course, they wrote the history of the Lafayette Escadrille. Men Against the Sea, Men Without Country, Pitcairn Island,
Hurricane,
and the Derelict. And I think one of the most funny story is was played by John Hall.
Which one is that?
It was No More Gas.
No More Gas.
And it tells the story of the real Tahitian family.
Of course, we have to recall that, remind our friends that John Hall is also Tahitian.
Oh yes, he came from a family here. And when he started as a young man, I guess his real name was Charles Locher.
That's the one.
And in order to find a name, I think, so he chose the name of Hall, one of the writers, and that's how he became John Hall. And presume he played in quite a few movies in the States.
And so he was a very famous actor. The fame of your father, writing in the books here, do you remember what the place he chose to write in Tahiti? Is it on the veranda or on the beach in the valley?
Most of the time he usually went to Hall's house, because I guess it was ours was a bigger family, and usually a writer can't afford to have noises around. But part of the time they wrote at our old home.
In Punaawia?
In Punaawia.
A very nice home, very huge, right on the waterfront there. How did he get his idea and the theme that his topic that he writes about?
From what I heard, Hall was quite the traveler. Even they went to Australia, to New Zealand to find through libraries, and even up to London. And of course, for Mutiny on the Bounty, he even went to Pitcairn Island.
You know, Jimmy, for someone that writes about Mutiny on the Bounty, a story that happened many years ago, and there are in Tahiti grandchildren of those mutineers that stayed in Tahiti, like the Adams, some of the mutineers that took off for Tubuai and Pitcairn Island, like the Christian, the Fletchers. Do you have any relation with them? You ever see them? You ever talk to them?
One of them is a good friend of mine. His name is Henri Adams. I mean, he's a person in his early 60s now, and there's another one, his name is Christian, who is living in Papeete also. But the rest, I think, from what I read or heard, many of them went to Norfolk Island.
What else could you tell us about Charles Nordhoff, the writer that became a member of the Tahitian Society?
He spoke quite a few languages, and he graduated, first of all, from Harvard. But in Tahiti, his life was so simple, and he could mix with the richest person like he could mix with the poorest person, and change his conversation to any way he wished.
I noticed, Jimmy, the book you're showing me now, Mutiny on the Bounty, was dedicated to Captain Andy Thompson. Who is he?
He was the captain on a schooner named Tiaretaporo, which was traveling between Tahiti, the Cook Island, and New Zealand. I'll never forget, every time he arrived here, while I was a child, I used to ask him every question he knew.
What kind of question did you ask Andy Thompson, you know?
For example, you didn't have a motor. How did you leave the port of Papeete? Because it's quite narrow for a sailboat. So every time they had to wait early in the morning, at least 4 or 4:30 in the morning, when you have the wind coming from the hills, and that was the only time they could leave the port. Unless it was really windy, the wind was favorable, but otherwise that was the only time they could leave.
Did he tell you any interesting story that stays in your mind about boats and his sailings through the South Seas?
Quite some rough things, and for example, like losing a mast and things like that. But of course, the only thing I think, as I was quite a good eater when I was a child, in Tahiti during the war, we didn't even have such thing as butter. Even sometime there wasn't such thing as bread so I think the main aim I was going on his boat was to go and eat. So, and I think otherwise I never forget him as a person.
Mr. Charles Nordhoff, did he love fishing?
He was quite a great fisherman. As a matter of fact, his good friend Zengray, who was here in the late part of the 20s, I guess my father gave him quite a few ideas fishing in Polynesia. Even I have pictures of Zengray with his autograph, and when he caught the world record of the biggest blue marlin in the world.
That was quite an accomplishment.
Yes, I think so.
But now I believe Zengray's house is still here.
Still not far away from here.
And thank you for visiting with us. Maruru.
Maruru.
Parhei.
Parhei.
And see you next time.
Maruru mete.